Members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, all following this meeting via social media, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, those in the tribune here at Parliament, a very good afternoon, as I welcome you to this Central Committee meeting of Parliament. This is Central Committee meeting number 16 for today, Monday, April 14th, 2025. At this time, I want to give a special welcome to the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luc Mercelina, as well as the Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, and their respective support staffs. We have established a quorum of 10 members, and I invite you to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the member Peterson and notices of lateness from the members La Cruz and Lewis. Are there any notifications from the floor of Parliament? I see we do have MP Irian wishing to take the floor, and I give the floor to MP Irian for notifications. MP Irian.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, revered colleagues, Minister, Honorable Minister of Finance, and Honorable Prime Minister. Madam Chair, also lateness for MP Edward Duran also. And Madam Chair, just for clarity, is this there's a meeting called by the National Alliance and the UP faction regarding the budget. We haven't had any update on that meeting. It was postponed last week, so we just want some clarity. Is this that meeting or not? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Irian, for your question, which of course I will answer, but I look to see if there are any other members of Parliament who wish to take the floor. That not being the case, we continue with the agenda for this meeting, at which time I would be addressing the question by MP Irian, which was just posed. But before I do any of that, I want to say a special word of welcome to two MPC students who are joining us here at Parliament for 3 weeks. This is part of their job training, and thus we have here at Parliament, we have Ms. Karina Huggins and Mr. Ken Huggins. We do hope, and I express this on behalf of Parliament, that not only do you enjoy your 3 weeks here with us as Parliament, but that you would take away enough from your internship here to see the possibility of working with a Parliament, preferable the Parliament of St. Martin, upon completion of your studies in the future. So we wish you good luck and much success here at Parliament for your job training. We have as agenda point for this meeting, number 1 on the agenda is the update on the process for the budget 2025. This is a document registered on the 876, so IS 876, and it is dated April the 11th, 2025. I will go in a little further into that particular request after I gave the agenda point number 2, which is the draft national ordinance amending the regulation for vacation and exemption of service, changing the amount of the vacation allowance, and also amending the manner in which future changes to the amount of the vacation allowance will be implemented. Also, granting 1 day of leave upon reaching the 45th anniversary of service. This draft national ordinance is numbered 1A3 of this parliamentary year. In other words, 2024-2025. I guess, given that our legislation is still communicated in Dutch that for good order's sake, I need to I need to give that it is de Ontwerplandsverordening tot wijziging van de regeling vakantie en vrijstelling van dienst, teneinde de hoogte van de vakantie-uitkering te wijzigen, alsmede de wijze waarop toekomstige wijzigingen van de hoogte van de vakantie-uitkeringen zullen worden gerealiseerd en het toekennen van een dag verlof bij het bereiken van de 45-jarige ambtsjubileum. This is National Ordinance number 183, and it is IS document 508 here in the Administration of Parliament, dated the 17th of January of this year. Going over to agenda point 1, I will also address, as I mentioned, the question by MP Irian on this particular agenda point. So this agenda point is titled Update Process Budget 2025. It is the document 876, dated April the 11th, 2025. It's on that day, so Friday last, that we received an email communique on behalf of the Minister of Finance with the request to have the above-mentioned agenda point added to today's meeting. Considering the urgency of the matter, as well as the many requests here at Parliament for information, as well as for meetings, which this update does not replace. However, given the urgency of the matter and the many questions regarding where are we with the budget 2025, which has already been approved by Parliament, I considered it prudent having both the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance here present today for agenda point number 2 to allow the Minister of Finance to provide Parliament and the population at large with an update with respect to the budget 2025. So to answer MP Irian's question, no, it is not replacing any of the requests for meetings, one. Secondly, it is not to, in answer to any of the questions that have been already posed, albeit I am sure some of it will come up in the presentation by the Minister of Finance. So with that explanation, that this agenda point is on request of the Minister to make use of her presence here this afternoon and provide Parliament with an update regarding the state of the budget 2025, I now give the floor to the Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, for her opening remarks on the topic, and as I see a presentation. Before the Minister of Finance does that, I want to explain, members, that we will get, hopefully also receive the presentation that will be given by the Minister of Finance, and then I will allow members who might have a question regarding something presented by the Minister the opportunity to ask. However, it will not be round after round on the topic of the budget. We're going to get an update, and again, I will allow members to ask a question or two regarding what is presented, and then we will go over to the second agenda point. So having explained that, I now give the Minister of Finance the floor on the topic of an update regarding the state or status of the budget 2025. Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, you have the floor.
Honorable Madam Chair Lady, honorable members of Parliament, honorable Prime Minister, Griffier, support staff, radio listeners, persons tuned in social media platforms, honored guests in the public tribune, all under the sound of my voice, good afternoon and blessed Holy Week to one and all. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this official update on the current status of the 2025 budget. Over the past weeks, there have been numerous requests, questions, interpretations, insinuations, misconceptions, and even false accusations surrounding Budget 2025. And truth be told, I understand why. When information is lacking, assumptions tend to fill the gap. That's exactly why I'm pleased to be here today to provide a clear and transparent update on where things stand. In all honesty, I would have preferred to give this update much earlier. However, extensive discussions were still ongoing with various stakeholders as we explored every possible avenue and determine the best way forward. Now that there is clarity on the chosen path, I can provide you with a full and accurate update. As you are aware, Budget 2025 was unanimously approved on January 17, 2025, signaling not only strong consensus, but also a collective commitment to the strategic and financial direction of our country. Despite this significant achievement, we have encountered technical and procedural challenges that have made it impossible to formally ratify the approved budget. Specifically, all amendments, both the memorandums of notification from the government and the amendments from Parliament that were approved during the parliamentary process, have presented legislative technical issues. To clarify, there were no issues with incorporating the financial intentions of these amendments into the budget itself. The issue lies in the textual formulation of the amendments, which in several cases were found to be legislatively incorrect or problematic in their written form. For clarity, had there been no proposed and approved amendments to Budget 2025, Budget 2025 as submitted to Parliament would have been enacted without any issue. To be absolutely clear, the problem does not lie with the budget that was submitted to Parliament. This issue arises solely from the incorporation of the 7 amendments into the final document known as the end text. The end text is the budget as submitted, including the incorporation of all the approved amendments. I now would go over to the agenda for today. We would have the opening, examples of technical issues, where are we today, efforts undertaken, timeline and next steps, communication, transparency, and accountability, what we have learned, and improved approach for future budgets, and closing. Madam Chair, we seem to have some technical cord. Plug it out and put it back in use.
Everything good now? Talk too fast. Let me maybe adjourn for 3 minutes just to make sure we got everything in place. Meeting adjourned for 3 minutes. The meeting is hereby resumed, and we just had paused for a few brief moments to make sure that the presentation that the Minister of Finance wishes to make, that it is up and running on the screen for everyone to follow. So again, not again, but I ask the Minister now to continue. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarity, I want to repeat, had there been no proposed and approved amendments to Budget 2025, Budget 2025 as submitted to Parliament would have been enacted without any issue. To be absolutely clear, the problem does not lie with the budget that was submitted to Parliament. This issue arises solely from the incorporation of the 7 amendments into the final document known as the end text. The end text is the budget as submitted, including the incorporation of all the approved amendments. The agenda will continue today with examples of technical issues, where we are today, efforts undertaken, timeline and next steps, communication, transparency and accountability, what we have learned and improved approach for future budgets, and closing. Examples of technical issues. One thing about me is that I'm fully committed to being transparent with both the Parliament and the people of St. Martin, not only on the issues, but also in providing solutions to prevent such issues from happening again. That's why I want to take a moment to explain some of the so-called technical issues we've been referring to, so that both the honorable members of Parliament and the people of St. Martin understand the nature of the challenges we were faced with. These are not major flaws, but they are legislatively incorrect, and that makes a difference in the legislative process. The examples provided are randomly selected and are presented solely to illustrate the types of technical challenges encountered. They are not intended to criticize or single out anyone. It is important to underscore that the right to submit amendments rests fully with the members of Parliament. It is their authority and prerogative. Example 1, amendment by Honorable Members of Parliament La Cruz, Lewis, and Otley. In this amendment, it was stated that the totals in Article 2, Paragraph 1 should be adjusted to 573 million guilders, referred to the red area on the slide. However, the issue here is that due to the memorandums of notification already submitted by the government, the original amounts had already been changed to 574 million guilders. Legislatively speaking, the amendment should have started from the updated numbers reflecting the government's memorandum of notification, and then applied the effect of the proposed amendment, which should have then stated the amount 574,560,681. Even then, it would still have been technically incorrect because it did not take into account the other amendments from Parliament, which would have required the members of Parliament to perform detailed calculations, incorporating all existing and pending amendments, which is just not a realistic expectation. One possible solution moving forward is to agree that members of Parliament do not include total adjustments in their amendment text and just indicate that any ripple effects will apply in accordance with financial principles. This is a key discussion point as we look to prevent similar issues in the future. Example 2, amendment by MP Myers. MP Myers submitted an amendment to change a number in the capital dienst, which is valid. However, the budget includes a detailed table that provides further breakdowns of the capital dienst. Since the amendment didn't specifically mention adjusting that detailed table, we are now in a position where the main figure is updated, but the supporting detail is not, because legislatively, that table cannot be changed without an explicit indication. The situation highlights how a single change can trigger a broader ripple effect throughout different parts of the budget, underscoring the importance of precision and clarity in the amendment process. This is a classic example of what we call a ripple effect adjustment, something I will elaborate on shortly. Example 3, Ministry of Justice Memorandum of Notification. In this case, the amendment included amendments at both the general ledger level and the economic classification level. However, the budget is not presented on a general ledger level, meaning those changes cannot legislatively be incorporated. While the economic classification adjustments are valid, including GL level changes in the same amendment makes the entire amendment legislatively incorrect. As I stated, I would go into more on the ripple effect. Most amendments target a specific economic category or budget line. However, changing one item can create a ripple effect. Subtotals change, totals change, and even summary tables elsewhere in the 200-page budget may be impacted. Legislatively, every number that changes as a result must be stated explicitly in the amendment. The question can be asked if it is realistic to expect every member of Parliament to know every affected page and total. Likely not. But legislatively, that's the current expectation. For example, a change to brutto salarism or gross salaries will affect the subtotal for salarism or salaries, the ministry's total personnel costs, and the national expenditure overview. All of that must be detailed in the amendment to be legislatively correct. In discussions with BZK, we have requested an example of how this is dealt with in the Netherlands as it pertains to amendments with ripple effects. The way forward. Clearly, we need to revisit how these processes are handled. It seems necessary to build in time for a thorough legislative review of amendments before they go to a vote. This is a conversation that must happen between the legal teams of government and Parliament in consultation with the governor to establish a clear and workable procedure. Because if we don't do this, we risk running into the same legislative complications again in future budget cycles or even other legislations. And that's something we must avoid for the sake of transparency, good governance, and efficiency. Where we are today, the government is unable to ratify the 2025 budget approved by Parliament due to legislative issues included in the memorandums of notifications from government and the amendments approved by Parliament. Considering this, the government has explored various options to enact a functional budget for 2025 as quickly as possible. After consultations with all stakeholders and considering the most straightforward path, the government has decided to submit a new budget for the year 2025. This newly submitted budget will be a replica of the initial 2025 budget presented to Parliament and include the following. 1. Memorandums of notification from government and approved amendments from Parliament will be incorporated, taking into account the unique nature of this situation. Number 2, TWO funding allocations will be included. Although these have a net zero effect on the budget, they are essential to ensure funds are utilized. For example, ministries such as TIAT and in particular VSA have secured approximately $2 million from TWO for specific projects. Including these amounts is key to making use of the available funds. And 3, the SCDF subsidy adjustment will also be incorporated as previously communicated in the government's letter to Parliament. This approach aims to ensure that the budget can be finalized efficiently while remaining compliant with legal and procedural requirements. Efforts undertaken. Since the approval of the budget in January 2025, the Ministry of Finance has actively engaged with several key stakeholders, including the Department of Legal Affairs and Legislation, the Griffier, and the Chairlady of Parliament, His Excellency the Governor, the Council of Advice, CFT, and BZK. It must be emphasized that this situation is partially unprecedented. There is no clear precedent or established procedure for handling a matter of this nature. During the entire process, all efforts were made to finalize the end text, as the financial intentions of Parliament have been duly incorporated. In previous years, parliamentary amendments that were approved and included in the budget also contained minor errors and did not account for all ripple effects. However, those cases, typically involving one or two amendments, were handled administratively, and the final text was approved without major issues. Given this precedent, various discussions were held in an attempt to resolve the matter administratively once again. These discussions took time. These technical issues are usually managed through internal procedural processes. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, an administrative resolution could not be reached. The government even went as far as providing Parliament with a proposed end text for approval, as we were and still are of the opinion that the financial intentions of Parliament were duly and accurately incorporated into the budget. For instance, the correct figures are reflected in Article 2 of the ordinance, taking into account all adjustments from both the government and Parliament. Specifically, in the case of the amendment by MP Myers, even the detailed table was adjusted to reflect Parliament's clear financial intent. Similarly, as it pertains to the amendment from the Ministry of Justice, all adjustments at the economic level have been incorporated into the budget. In addition, we have also accounted for all the ripple effects of the proposed amendments to ensure internal consistency across the document. However, Parliament did not approve the final text as it did not follow the usual administrative procedure, specifically the process in which the final text is submitted by Parliament via legal affairs, who would typically verify whether the amendments were correctly incorporated. In this case, that verification step was not completed due to the legal technical issues previously mentioned. As such, the government maintains that the financial intentions of Parliament were duly incorporated in the final text submitted for approval. Nevertheless, the legal issue remains, and we fully respect Parliament's position in choosing not to approve the final text under those circumstances. While we attempted to finalize the end text, we simultaneously explored various alternative avenues to resolve the matter in a way that would be both legally sound and procedurally acceptable. Another option explored was the novel approach. While some stakeholders suggested exploring the novel approach, others criticized it, pointing out that it is not a common practice within the St. Martin context, and the legislative structure differs from that of the Netherlands. However, the discussion was not about terminology, but about the underlying concept and how to resolve the issue. The core challenge has been determining how to correct amendments that, while approved, contain legislative and textual inaccuracies, especially after the budget has already been unanimously passed by Parliament. One option that was explored, thank you, PM, was a corrective law amendment, which initially appeared to be the quickest and legally sound solution. However, this path raised significant legislative uncertainties, such as the status of the original approved budget, which could not be ratified due to textual issues. For a corrective law to be enacted, the initial law must be enacted first, which in this case is not possible. Given these complexities and the need to have the budget 2025 go into effect as soon as possible, the limited legislative capacity available, and the looming deadline from BZK, the decision was made to submit a new budget with minimal changes. This approach is the clearest path forward, has the least legislative uncertainties, and is understood and accepted by all relevant parties. Timeline and next steps. The goal is to have a newly approved budget 2025 by the Council of Ministers by April 30th, 2025. Following this approval, the budget will be submitted to the following. 1, the Council of Advice with urgency for formal review and feedback. 2, once the advice is received, the NADA report will be prepared and suggested amendments will be incorporated accordingly. And 3, a letter will be sent to CFT and BZK explaining why the April 30th, 2025 deadline could not be met. It will be clarified that the budget is a national ordinance and must follow the appropriate legislative trajectory. While this has already been communicated verbally by the Minister Plenipotentiary, Ms. Arundel, during the Kingdom Council of Ministers meeting, we will now formally confirm this in writing. We anticipate that the revised budget 2025 will be returned to Parliament for handling by early June 2025. Clarifying intentions and addressing budget 2025 delay. I have formally requested this agenda point in today's meeting to ensure full transparency and to keep Parliament apprised every step of the way. I also want to assure you that the intention of the government is not to undermine the authority of Parliament. On the contrary, we are working to uphold the integrity of the budgetary process and ensure that all measures included in the budget are legislatively and procedurally sound. We remain committed to working with Parliament to ensure the new version meets both the legislative standard and the political consensus that has already been established. The government will continue to operate and govern the country based on the 2024 budget as amended in accordance with Article 16, Paragraph 3 of the National Accountability Ordinance. To ensure the 2025 budget goes into effect as soon as possible, the entry into force clause will stipulate that the budget will enter into force urgently in accordance with Article 127, Paragraphs 3 and 4 of the Constitution in conjunction with Article 17, Paragraphs 1 and 2 of the National Ordinance Constitutional Court. With this urgency clause in place, it is expected that both the 2025 budget and the draft national ordinance on the vacation and leave regulation, vacation allowance, that will be handled in today's Central Committee meeting of Parliament will be enacted in June. The aim is for these to take effect in June, which will allow for the additional 1% vacation allowance to be paid to all civil servants in June. As it pertains to the 2% indexation, this also will be paid out. However, some time will be needed for the salary administration to carry out the necessary manual calculations to facilitate the retroactive payment. What have we learned and what should be considerations for changes as we deal with any budget? Following the challenges encountered in finalizing the 2025 budget end text, the government recognizes the need to enhance the amendment process to prevent similar technical issues from arising in the future. To achieve this, the government proposes collaborating with Parliament to develop standardized templates for amendment notes and amendments. These templates will ensure that all necessary components, including financial and legal aspects, are properly addressed, reducing discrepancies and improving efficiency in future budget processes. Additionally, the government suggests initiating a dialogue with relevant stakeholders to determine whether for future amendments, the totals affected by the ripple effect must be explicitly stated in amendment notes and amendments passed by Parliament, or whether a general reference to the ripple effect would be sufficient. From the government side, the Ministry of Finance will coordinate future amendment notes, ensuring a more thorough review of financial and legal implications before submission. These measures, based on lessons learned from the current process aim to strengthen the accuracy, transparency, and efficiency of the budget amendment procedure. In closing, I thank Parliament for its continued cooperation and understanding throughout this process. Budget 2025 is not just a financial document. It reflects our shared priorities, our national vision, and our collective responsibility to deliver for the people of St. Martin. It is therefore in all of our best interest to finalize it swiftly, accurately, and in full accordance with the law, ensuring a solid foundation for the remainder of the year. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister of Finance, for those remarks. I also ask if you can please share your presentation with Parliament so that members can, if necessary, review it. And members of Parliament, as I indicated, I will give all members the opportunity to briefly ask the Minister to clarify anything that you might not have understood from her presentation, and I immediately go over and give the floor to MP Otley. MP Otley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good day to the Honorable Minister of Finance, the Honorable Prime Minister, the viewing and listening public. Madam Chair, we need this meeting ASAP. ASAP, ASAP, because the explanation that is given today doesn't make it any better in my view. It was sugar-coated, and it sounds like this was the most perfect government in the whole wide world, and the big bad Parliament messed up the budget. And then we're randomly picking amendments, but we're picking an amendment which was budget neutral and was advised by the minister to take a different route. So today, to randomly put the amendment that we had, I find this a bit strange. Because when I hear this, Madam Chair, through you, it feels like this was the first Parliament ever to submit amendments. The first Parliament ever. Because everything that I heard today is if the Parliament didn't do this and the Parliament didn't do that, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, we speak about transparency, we are now in April. And at a certain point, things that we are now going to finally start to work on could have happened already. Madam Chair, to the Honorable Minister of Finance, I see that you said a new budget is coming, will be presented. But the new budget will have the amendments that is our amendments in it. But then it's the same budget. That's where I'm lost. So a new budget will become, but it's the same budget, but the budget will have the amendments in it, and then you're adding the SCDF amendments, so it's not the same budget. The whole purpose, Madam Chair, of the budget in the first place, when the budget was brought, it was said that in the next 6 weeks it's coming back with amendments, so which means that, in essence, the government itself was not satisfied with the budget. So I know that it could not expect Parliament to be satisfied, hence the reason so much amendments to the budget. Because no one, well, I'll speak on my end, in my faction, was satisfied. However, there are questions that are being asked to me. The Honorable Minister of Justice was one of the only ministers that started the presentation by saying, I cannot work with this budget. But one of the main reasons, Madam Chair, that I said okay to this budget was the fact that I actually saw in the presentation the Honorable Minister of Justice had payments ready to go to the justice workers. And now we are seeing unrest. And when they ask us or ask me as a member of Parliament, I have nothing to say. I don't know. Because in my statement to support the budget, I stated that one of my main reasons is that these justice workers can start to receive money. When we are asked about, now we see a spike and all of a sudden GB is going back off again, and they're asking, what is the update with the generators? When are they going to be there? I can say, I don't know. When we're asking about different aspects that was in the budget, I don't know. and then we seek transparency in communication. So, Madam Chair, I thank you for having this agenda in today's meeting, but it just piqued my interest even more and gave me more questions. So I cannot wait until we actually have the meeting pertaining to the budget itself, since I can't ask the 20 questions that I want to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Otley. I see MP Lewis requesting the floor. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister and Prime Minister and your support staff. Good afternoon to the listening and viewing public of St. Martin, those in the Tribune, and the honorable members of Parliament. I would like to hearken based on what my colleague just said. To you, Madam Chair, Minister of Finance, I'm very, very disappointed in seeing the random amendment that was chosen, especially when my name is bold and broad on it. We did our due diligence as members of Parliament, the three of us, and it was presented. And as my colleague just mentioned, we were requested to make a change in it by the Honorable Minister of Finance. And today, on public screen, we are thrown under the bus. Minister, this thing got me quite upset about it. But I would like clarity as to specifically what was wrong within the amendment that caused this budget not to be ratified the way it's supposed to be at this time. That will be all for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Lewis. I don't see any other member of Parliament except for MP Duran at this time. And I give MP Duran the floor. MP Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Pleasant good afternoon to you, my colleagues, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, the entire entourage, and a special good afternoon to the people of St. Martin. Madam Chair, I remember in December of 2024, when I mentioned, hartstikke spoed is zelden goed. Reason being, because I was requesting to allow us a little bit more time, an hour I think I asked for, and that was shot down because we just started to receive documents about the budget. And my whole point was things were being rushed down our throat. We had no time to properly process it, yet we were expected to have clear dialogue on it. Fast forward, Madam Chair, we are here today, April 14th, back in the circle of not having proper information, not having enough time to divulge and go into it. I heard the minister mention through you, Madam Chair, if there were no amendments, there would be no issues with the budget. But I could clearly remember even a member of the coalition clearly highlighting where notes in the budget were clearly referencing 2024 when we were handling the 2025 budget. That had nothing to do with amendments, Madam Chair. I also see all the examples given as to why things went wrong. But I remember, Madam Chair, before the budget is even voted upon, each minister took their time to eloquently explain why they agreed with those particular amendments. There even was a special opportunity based on the random example that was given on the screen here today, where a third round was given for the Member of Parliament, La Cruz, to go back into it based on consultation with the minister. So to hear today, Madam Chair, that it's Parliament's fault and all what Parliament did, it's quite unfortunate, and I really hope that the government could dive deep into taking some kind of accountability for what is happening here today. Madam Chair, I clearly asked during that debate, did this go back to legal affairs for proper vetting for verification? The minister then mentioned it was not necessary. Today we see a different story on the screen, Madam Chair, based on the presentation. Now we're hearing that amendments are going to come for SCDF, it's going to come for AZ with the Teweo and Carnival, yet we don't hear anything about the revenue-generated measures that was promised to us 6 months ago. Because 6 months ago, when we asked questions, it was told, you know, this is a conservative budget, et cetera, in the amendment in May, we will then get all the revenue-generating points. That was not even discussed here today. I also heard, Madam Chair, and this is a question that I would like clarity on through you. Parliament does not want to approve the text that was submitted. I would like to know through you, Madam Chair, which Parliament? Because I don't remember ever having the opportunity to approve and or disapprove any text. What I do remember was a long letter with memos, and the budget was sent to Parliament. When I asked the SG, the competent authority, to give an explanation as to what is expected from us, I also sent information and emails to the Presidium. No response, Madam Chair. So to hear that we had to approve, I would like to know through you, was it that the Chair of Parliament had to approve this text, or was it that members of Parliament had to approve and didn't want to approve? Madam Chair, all of this extra discussion, time consumption of the civil servants, just not to say, hey, listen, you know what, guys, I messed up, it was an error, let's fix it together. I've made countless calls to the government, bring it back, let us get it out of the way, and this is since February. February, March, April, now we're talking about May and June. And Holland have to come, the kingdom government have to come now and tell us, hey guys, clap on the finger, get your act together. It's a shame, Madam Chair. It's a shame. And today, this presentation here, in all seriousness, is too little, too late. And I really hope that a change of heart can come in the sense of bringing it back before June. Because you're telling me then anything new that the government does is in direct contravention with our Constitution because they're not acting within the realms of the legal framework, which is the budget. And we are now expected to hold a blind eye because we have a promise that it might come in June. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair, and I look forward to clarity for the points I brought forward. Thanks again.
Thank you, MP Duran. Before I give the floor to MP Irian once again, I ask if there are any other member who wishes to address the topic or ask questions to the minister. That not being the case, MP Irian, you have something to add or ask in addition to your earlier ones?
Earlier one, Madam Chair?
You did not speak before? No. My bad, MP Irian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Things seem a little unseen here today. Madam Chair, based on the presentation given, I'd like to say that it's unfortunate that we are putting the civil servants' vacation pay at risk. It's unfortunate that we are putting the payments of police at risk. It's unfortunate that vendors can't be paid. It's unfortunate that bonuses can't be paid. It's unfortunate that subsidies can't be paid. It's unfortunate that all of the ministers and council ministers have stacks of advices probably piling up because the governor is signed off because there's no approved budget 2025. It's unfortunate that this government is not moving. It's unfortunate that we are stagnant today. And the reason why we are stagnant today, and the Minister of Finance made it very clear, is because of the stakeholders. So we are stuck today because of, seemingly, the Minister of Finance, the Chair of Parliament, because no one on this side for sure was asked on any tax. We weren't involved. So today, to the civil servants, to persons not being paid, to any entity still being owed by government, today, these are the individuals you have to blame. On that side over there, they refuse to hold their government accountable. On our side, the National Alliance side, we've called our first meeting requesting information about the budget in February. Then we called a second meeting. We called a third meeting. We got so desperate that we sent a Presidium email asking, hey, but why we can't get responses? Can you kind of include us in the discussion? And today, still no meeting. In addition to that, we have to hear on the road and on the radio as members of Parliament about some novel. But there's no kind of decency with this coalition, this government, to say, hey, as members of Parliament, even a closed-door meeting, even a simple closed-door meeting to come and say, hey, members of the opposition, because the coalition obviously knows what's going on, let's have a closed-door meeting and let's explain what the situation is. Today, we have to find out that MP Atley and La Cruz made errors, but it was unfortunate. They had a whole different amendment. which I told them, I said, guys, stick to your amendment. But they were advised by the government to change their amendment, with information given by the government to change their amendment, unfortunately. Madam Chair, when we, for the last 3 months, the public has been asking me questions and what is novel thing, and even some members in here, I said, guys, based on my information, based on legal advice I have from the Netherlands, I don't think this is going to work. I've written it, I've sent it on radio, but again, the only persons that were important, as the Minister of Finance mentioned, were her stakeholders. Legal Affairs, the Greffier, as she mentioned, and the Chair of Parliament. I've even asked, I've heard the Chair of Parliament say on the radio that the Parliament prefers to go this route. And I said, but how? Because I didn't get consulted on it. The Parliament don't prefer, but the Chair has already mentioned that she represents, through you, Madam Chair, represents the body of Parliament. So, and because of that, as I've said before, then the accountability of where we are today is also on the representation of the body of Parliament. Why today we don't have the budget done and ratified. In December and in January, the big speech was about having the fastest and earliest budget. And today, there will be a new record, the latest ratified budget in St. Martin history. And in addition to that, the minister says in her presentation, we're going to have a replica. A replica is an exact copy or model of something. But no, it's an insert of Carnival and Tewio, and if you add this, so that means that the first budget had issues. And that comes to my second question, because, again, I heard on radio from the chair said that the government could just send their changes to the budget, and they could continue to execute, and when they amend it, we'll retroactively ratify it, fix it. So my first question is to the government, the Minister of Finance, Prime Minister, what legal basis is there for the government to make amendments to the budget and only send a letter to Parliament and make that payment and execute? So what's the legal basis for that? And if that's the case, then can we do that with everything, with every legislation? Because we could just say, hey, this law got changed, we're going to tell Parliament nothing, we're going to update it with a letter, and whenever the budget, let's do the SAHA one time, update it, and then execute on a later basis. The minister also mentioned that we're going to include the Terrio advices, the Terrio income. And the minister mentioned that the only issue with budget 2025, no, I have to smile because I'm crying. I have to leave one of my emotions out. The only issue with the budget 2025 is the amendments, the mistakes that the Parliament made. But that's incorrect. That's incorrect because the minister herself mentioned that now in this budget, we're going to include the Terrio. But Terrio already was known from last year. Terrio actually had to be included in the budget 2025 already. So much so, right, that the government even made advices based on this income from Terrio that was sent, approved by the Council of Ministers, knowing that it was not budgeted for in 2025. And if I'm wrong, Madam Chair, I'll let the government to clarify that. Did the government make advices based on revenue that was not budgeted in 2025? So much so, I believe even approved by the Council of Ministers. Because that would mean then that no, the amendments were not an issue. The budget was an issue. So clarity on that, please, Madam Chair. Oh, by the way, so much so that I even heard it went to the governor to be signed. Please, can I get confirmation of that, please, Madam Chair, Madam Chair? Because again, that would mean that the budget had an issue, not the amendments. And then in December, we asked the questions again, and MP Lacruz said it well, that we were misled. We were misled because in December, I asked specifically about Soul Beach, and how Soul Beach was going to be paid. It was said the government is going to pay for Soul Beach. No, come to find out months later in interviews and so forth, that Soul Beach is partially being paid from a concession from the port. So, and I specifically asked that, so if that's the case, then the budget's off again. So I would like clarity on that, Madam Chair. How is Soul Beach, give me the exact details of how Soul Beach is being paid, because that means the revenue is off, Madam Chair. It's not just the amendments, because if the concession is supposed to come in, and you're going to pay any items from the concession, they have to be assigned to a line item. They have to be assigned to a line item. And if you don't assign to a line item, that means the revenue has dropped in government. It's not the budget that was presented to us. So again, we as members of parliament, we can't hold the government accountable if the government don't give us the right information or misspeak. Madam Chair, so I would like clarity on that. Did the government fib in December and not give us the right information for us to do our jobs? And going forward, I believe we should go back to what it was before, not having, give the members of parliament detailed budgets so that we could now know the line items and we could hold the government accountable and not be, and that's one of the reasons why the amendments were messed up, because we don't have no detailed budget. We don't know which line items they are. So we can't look back and say, hey, this line item belongs here. No. So I would request that going forward, in addition to the other proposal by the minister, that we also get the detailed budget. And my last two questions would be, are there any potential instructions coming from the Netherlands? And is the bond affected in any way? Are there any potential instructions coming from the Netherlands, and is the bond affected in any way? And again, going back on what I said earlier about Soul Beach and among other things, will all of these not be ratified? Because Soul Beach can be paid in 2025 because we will have a budget 2025. And in June, what I expect, the same way, without a legal basis, we paid last year indexation, I expect even if the budget is late, we will find a way to pay civil servants the same 1% of vacation pay, the same way you did last year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. I now give the floor to MP De Wever. MP De Wever, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Lady, to my colleagues, to Prime Minister, Minister of Finance with their teams, everyone listening to this meeting. And I have to apologize to you, Madam Chair, and to the griffier, because I think I pressed my button 3 times and I took it off, because every time somebody said something, I wanted to react immediately. And I said maybe I shouldn't, but this time I couldn't be quiet, because if some of the MPs weren't so obsessed in having their motions and amendments passed, then maybe then they could have seen the issues in the budget from the beginning, rather than saying it's over on this side that the problem is. But nevertheless, with that being said, I do have one question for the Minister of Finance based on her actual presentation, which is if the Minister can explain to me, please, exactly what she means by the 1% vacation allowance to be paid in June. I just wanted to see if the full amount is going to be paid out, because it says 1%, so I'm a little bit confused on that. Also, on the same slide from the minister, the minister refers to fast-track implementation. I just need a time. I know other MPs have asked that before, but how fast or how soon can we expect this to come back to Parliament so that we can resolve this issue once and for all of a unanimously approved budget by the same members of Parliament that are trying to throw the blame over on this side? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP De Wever. I see the next speaker is MP York. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to yourself, ministers, support staffs, honorable colleagues, those in the Tribune and the viewing public. Madam Chair, a couple months ago, January to be exact, during my motivation for voting for the budget, I referenced the fact that the minister made a very compelling speech towards the end of all the things that would not be able to be paid if this budget wasn't passed, being the teachers, being the justice workers, etc. And also, there was a feeling, both past and present, that opposition plays opposition just for plain opposition's sake. And I referenced the fact that even though I had my questions, I would be giving the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance the benefit of the doubt. And in the minister's presentation just now, through you, Madam Chair, she referenced the fact that because the budget was passed unanimously, it signaled consensus of Parliament. I slightly disagree in the sense of it didn't only signal a consensus from Parliament, it signaled trust from Parliament. And to see and to hear, because I'm saying to hear because everything was then heard over radio, via our email here, email there, and basically on the road, to hear everything up to now via different channels than the minister herself directly, gives me the feeling that that trust was not reciprocated to Parliament once something was found wrong with the budget. Because when I listened to and watched the presentation, it was very detailed, and the one conclusion you would get out of it was the fact that there was a lot of you, but the government will solve the issue. And, you know, the first thing that came to mind while listening and watching the presentation was that the minister checked the box of transparency, but they would say in Dutch, onderbuikgevoel, I feel that the minister is still leaving out a bit of truth in that package. I say that because of the following reasons, and I'll say my feeling is, not based on something that I read on paper or anything, but I'll explain that feeling. What was explained was that the amendments were the reason for the delay in ratifying of the budget and the reason why the budget has to come back to Parliament, and that being in June. But I am of the opinion, if it's just amendments, especially amendments brought by Parliament, that same presentation, after all of the questions from Parliament over the last 3 months, could have been communicated to Parliament a long time ago. Why did we have to wait 3 months to get this update? Again, especially if amendments were given prior to being submitted, changes were made, advice was followed, but the party or the individuals that submitted that amendment never got a call from the minister like, hey, boo, come inside, I got to explain you something. Never. But 3 months later, an eloquent presentation explaining all what was wrong with their amendment. Just the amendment that got the most work. You know, growing up, I always heard that transparency isn't about how much you speak, but it's about what you refuse to hide. And again, I'm speaking purely off of feeling. I do not get the feeling that all the reasons given today are the sole reasons why the budget has a problem. Because, again, if these amendments are the sole reason why the budget has an issue, it should not take 6 months to be remedied. It should not take 3 months to give Parliament a mere update in person to what is the issue. Because again, in January, prior to voting for the budget, Madam Chair, all reasons and why and ramifications of the budget not being passed at the time, things of the teachers not being able to get paid, justice workers not being able to get paid, the amendment from May that was supposed to come in May not being able to come in on time, all these reasons were used. And now we're hearing that the budget is coming back to Parliament in June. So I have the following questions for the minister or for any relevant minister that would be able to answer it. If the budget is coming back to Parliament in June, Madam Chair, what happened to the amendment with revenue-generating measures that was promised to Parliament that was supposed to return in May? Furthermore, during the presentations of the various ministers during the budget debate, I would say more than half, this is just a rough estimate, more than half of the projects that were named were projects that depended on CAPEX 2025. Financially driven by CAPEX 2025. Now, if the budget is only being passed in June, maybe ratified July, going into August, what consequences does that have on the request of CAPEX 2025 funds. Not only that, what happens to the revenue generating measures that were supposed to come back to Parliament in May? And the budget that's coming back in June, again, it's sent to be a replica with just the adjustments. But I feel that the government is using that opportunity to fix things that were already wrong or was missing from the prior budget. Because again, maybe the minister can explain this before I make any insinuations. Why does it need to take 6 months to fix a handful of amendments? It's just simple. Why does it need 6 months to fix a handful of amendments? Because if it was such a rush in December and January when everyone on this side of the room, if you're pointing out sides, everyone on this side of the room are like, what is the rush? Why out of the blue there seems to be no rush to get this corrected? So again, I'm not insinuating anything. I would like to give the minister, through you, Madam Chair, the opportunity to clarify why does it take 6 months, or is it going to take 6 months to get this problem remedied? And seeing that this isn't the official meeting request that was requested in February, and I really don't understand, finally, when an update of this magnitude comes to Parliament, that it's simply 2 questions and move on. I don't think we're taking the gravity of this situation as serious as it is. So I'll refrain from asking my list of questions until the subsequent meeting is called, which is, I'm hearing calls of it not being any time imminent, but I hope the chair of Parliament can maybe give a heads up on that and when Parliament can expect that meeting to be called at some point during this update. And I'll refrain from asking any further questions, seeing I have a 2-question max. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the minister's indulgence.
Thank you, MP York. I continue now, and I give the floor to MP La Cruz. MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
A blessed afternoon, Madam Chair Lady, the griffier, my fellow colleagues in Parliament, those in the Tribune, Prime Minister, your support staff, the Minister of Finance, and her support staff. Madam Chair Lady, when I sent out an article and I said, I feel like I was being lied to, the Minister of Finance told me, I did not lie to you, MP La Cruz. And then it reminded me of something when I was young. The grown folks used to tell us the word lie is for big people. Little children say fibs. So maybe, or teen true. So maybe it was that what the minister was trying to tell me that I should have said. On my way here, I'm listening to the presentation and I'm thinking, unbelievable. Unbelievable. I am extremely disappointed to hear that kind of rubbish. And I'm going to be clear about it. Our amendment had changes brought to it by the Minister of Finance in consultation with everyone else. So if there were mistakes, definitely I would have expected, after all this time, to hear, just like the minister did before, through you, Madam Chair Lady, MP La Cruz, I need to speak to you. I am disappointed. And this is not political, this is just the facts. At which point are we going to get it right? I started a meeting and I said, I am not going to focus on the numbers. I am going to focus on the policies. I have asked numerous times for meetings, even if it's a closed-door meeting, to come up with ideas to generate monies. Madam Chair Lady, 0 from the other side. 0. but we're cutting and cutting and cutting, and we can't pay police, we can't pay this, we can't pay that. I just came from an appointment at the hospital where I'm told I come in here for 1, 2, 3 months, and then I leave, and we don't have anyone here after that. What are we doing? When are we going to get it right? It is simple. Please take that idea out of your minds that there's a coalition, a minority, a majority. You have 15 individuals that are ready to work for country St. Martin, and you are not making use of us. I am tired of excuses. Every time I go on the road, people have to say, we're hungry. We can't pay this. We can't afford this. The supermarket, one bag is $100. Gas prices still going up. No relief. Where are we going? Where are we going? You have individuals that want to help. Set your pride aside and put country first. Let's call the meeting. If you want to do a closed-door meeting, let's do that. Let's get things rolling. Let's get this rolling, please. I am tired. Mentally, physically, emotionally, I am drained. Fed up. I would really like to hear the minister once again say that it is our amendment. That is my question. I need a clarification. Because I would love the minister to not say on the floor of Parliament that the advice to put it in that manner came from herself. Through you, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I now have the speakers, MP De Wever and MP Otley, who wish to add to their previous questions and or comments. So I start with MP. I was going to start with MP De Wever, but you're ready, MP De Wever? Okay. MP De Wever.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I understand and respect the fact that everyone's a little bit impatient because it's gone on quite a long time that we expected to have resolved the issues of the budget with the technical errors, as was partially explained by the Minister of Finance. But I'm going to go back to my notes of during the minister's presentation of what she spoke about, because the minister in the slide 3 example, when she referred to the amendment for MP La Cruz, I understand quite clearly the reactions of some of the MPs because of the fact that, you know, you feel like there is being singled out, but I believe that there is a greater issue here that we actually have to resolve in our expectations of how we do the business of the people, especially when it comes to our debates on the budget. Because as the Minister of Finance explained to us in terms of the interpretations of how we on this side will write an amendment and how it is interpreted not only by the minister, but also her ministry, but also across the other ministries. I just want to understand if when we come back to the budget debate, if Parliament is going to have a separate session, whether that's closed door, very similar to how we do it in the orientation, where the Ministry of Finance staff come in here and explain to us how we do our work and, you know, how they prepare the budgets, the responsibilities of each ministry, and then, you know, what we tend to look for in it. But it's very important here now that the messaging or understanding by members of Parliament or Parliament as a whole is very clear. Because if we are going to do business as usual, when you look at the MPs, we have some MPs who are here for the first time and some of those who have been here for more than one term, that everyone's on the same page in their knowledge, in their interpretation of the budget, and how we can do amendments, not with the knowledge of a minister, but with the limited knowledge that we have over on this side. Because if I come in with an amendment and then I'm supposed to, as an MP, be expected to not only recommend or have my colleagues pass an amendment, but I also need to make sure that I understand the rolling balance of a budget, which is not my responsibility as a member of parliament. That is the Ministry of Finance and the applicable minister's responsibility. How are we going to handle that before this budget comes back? And it's something that not just me, but all of my colleagues should be concerned with. So I would like to know if the Ministry of Finance, via the Minister of Finance, Madam Chair Lady, will be having a separate closed-door meeting with Parliament on how we are going to handle and interpret and what to expect in the details of the budget going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, MP De Weaver. I now give the floor to MP Otley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I echo the sentiments of the colleague before me. You made 100% sense, because that's what I was going to ask. At some point, you know, when you think you're following the norm of an institution that has been here, what, since 10, and then now all of a sudden things are different, then we need a crash course on how to then submit the proper amendments. But that's not my real question right now, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, through you, my question is to the Honorable Prime Minister, the Chair of the Council of Ministers. In our institution, we have something called a pound of flesh. And people have to be held responsible. And I want to ask the Honorable Prime Minister through you, do you still have the confidence in the Minister of Finance? And this is a very important question, because to the SAM party, when the police start to hit the road, somebody will be held responsible. To the URSM party, when the civil servants don't get their COLA, don't get their increase, and they start to strike, somebody has to be held responsible. To the Democratic Party, when Soul Beach get canceled, somebody gonna have to be held responsible. I know, right? But at the end of the day, I ask this question now, do you as the chair of COM still has the confidence in the Honorable Minister of Finance? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Otley. Members of Parliament, I think it's important for the discussion that I respond actually to questions asked directly to the chair, but also to give some insight into this discussion. And the minister prepared an elucidation, and in that elucidation, the Minister of Finance highlighted at least one amendment. And what happens, the Parliament starts to beat up on itself and its members for the amendments that have been presented. I don't know if it came out clear enough, but all 7 amendments that were amendments by the government itself via notas van wijziging, as well as amendments from Parliament, in the technical discussion at the government, ended up to be understood not being able to be processed into the budget. No accusation is being leveled at any member of Parliament, initiator or co-signer of any amendment. As many as the Minister and several of members of Parliament have indicated, there is no separate blueprint for amendments from Parliament where the budget is concerned. So, some members decided to hit subtotals and grand totals based on their amendments. Other members did not add in any type of totals in the budget. So I don't know why we're here beating up on ourselves as members of Parliament. That is not what the discussion is about today. One, there is no blueprint for amendments specifically on the budget. They need to come. They need to come. And if there's anything that should gain priority in the discussions about updating the budgetary procedures which are taking place in the context of the TWO, it should be this. So nobody is really at fault here or accusing anyone. The fact is that regularly speaking, and I realize several MPs listen carefully to when I speak on the radio, and I'm very grateful for that, because regularly speaking, and a law by Parliament, passed by Parliament, is to then be checked by the government to make sure that we have the final text, especially if amendments are involved. How do you incorporate these amendments? That text, and I asked those who are asking, but Parliament didn't approve anything. No, the Parliament coming to a public meeting of Parliament to discuss an end text. That is not the way it works. In fact, if members of Parliament care to check the procedure regarding the March-April 2024 budget, one would recognize that a proposal for end text came from the administration of government to our administration, and here some issues were picked up, and thus it was sent back to the government to be corrected, who then did so all on an administrative level. Today, based on all of the amendments to the budget 2025, parts of the administration of government who are responsible for the legal check are saying, given the textual parts of the amendments, we cannot just incorporate them in the budget. That is what the issue is here. Not who make a good amendment, a bad amendment, a mediocre amendment, whatever the case may be. So, saying all of that, yes, I believe, I stated it, and I still believe that we could have followed the procedure of a novella. What would have happened with the budget that is there? Fact is, the novella would have just included what needed to be amended. Parliament would have hopefully accepted that. Together with the budget that is there, we had a big hole. That is not, a hole in like an entity. That is not my call to make. And if the government is saying their preference is to come with a full new budget based on their legal discussions, that is the presentation that have been made. That is the presentation that have been made. So the end text procedure is not something that comes to Parliament. It's between the administrations. Our Secretary General looks at it, and then I would send out the letter. But a comparison, like it did in 2024 and all the years before that, is between the administrations to make sure what Parliament approves in the law and potential amendments put together, it is the totality of the approval of Parliament. That is what this discussion is all about. And I hope that based on what we have before us now, indeed, I hope it can be before it is estimated. But again, if that is what the government is telling us is necessary, Council have advised to Parliament, because once the new budget comes, we got to go through CC, etc., of a national ordinance. There is also a discussion going on currently in the context of the new budgetary procedures to come to beleidsbegrotingen, policy budgets, which means that the Parliament will not be getting the detailed item for item budget like we used to in the past. That too is a discussion to be had. Once that happens, the entire elucidation from government needs to be very, very clear, because it cannot be so that Parliament approves a lump sum and the government decides, well, from that lump sum, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're not going to do. But that discussion is going to come up. The members of Parliament would recall that we once received a budget that only spoke of personnel costs and material costs. 2-line items for every department. And it was the Parliament who said, but wait a minute, what are we to do with this? And we received a more detailed budget. But the discussions about a policy budget rather than an itemized budget, that discussion is still very much alive in the context of the financial management improvements, advancements, whatever have you. So I wanted to state that, members of Parliament, I hope the matter of the end text is clear. It is not something that comes to Parliament in no public meeting. And yes, it is the chair, based on the research by our administration, would say, yes, this is what the Parliament has decided based on the law itself, based on amendments, etc. I also said, yeah, I believe the process of the novella, it's a process. It's not a law we're following. It's a process. I believe it could have worked. Government is saying no. They see it differently, and that I have to understand and accept, because it's government's responsibility for that. So, in fact, those of you who have looked at de draaiboek voor de totstandkoming van regelgeving, wetgeving to that effect, you would see where the eindtekstprocedure is outlined, and it is not something of the Parliament as a body, as a whole, to have meetings to decide, yes, this is the eindtekst, yes or no. So, members of Parliament, I do see I have 2 more speakers. I will give you the opportunity to briefly add to the discussion. However, once you do that, I will look at the minister in terms of when and how she can respond to this particular matter and your questions, and then we go over to the next agenda point. So, I see MP York, you have something briefly to add to this discussion. I invite you to do so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I must say, in listening to you, you brought me to the following thought, something that I read on my recent trip back from Latino. Basically, I had to look up the quote. Basically, they said, leadership is to understand the difference between authority and leadership, right? And in saying that, oftentimes because people are authorized, or people at the highest levels are authorized to do certain things, they forget that leadership is still needed. What I mean by that, authority can be leveraged the same way leadership can be leveraged. And the main thing about leadership is communication and bringing people together. And in everything that has happened since January, it's about authority and not about leadership, right? And I look at the Prime Minister in saying this because the Prime Minister is the leader of COM, and I look at the President of Parliament because although you speak on behalf of Parliament, people still see you as the leader of Parliament, myself included, right? So in saying that, communication is something that did not happen throughout these last 3 months. And in sending a letter here and there while we walk the same halls and sit in the same rooms, that also is not communication, right? And a lot of things that was said here today is thrown under the scope of beating up one another. That is not this. What I heard was not people beating up on each other. What I heard was people saying, why wasn't this communicated with me earlier, right? And moving forward, not even moving forward, looking back at my very first address during the budget amendment debate in October, the first thing I said, we have a problem with communication on this side of the room. The other side of the room has a problem with communication on that side of the room. And we all have a problem with communication going back and forth. And we could sit here and dibble-dabble about it being a budget today, but a budget today could be a law tomorrow. The budget is a law, but at the end of the day, the people suffer, right? So we could sit here, go back and forth about where it went wrong, how it went wrong. At the end of the day, the people that are supposed to communicate are not communicating, right? And, you know, I mentioned this to a particular member of COM a while back. You could have the distrust, but until you actually communicate, you can't use it as a reason not to communicate. So at the end of the day, Madam Chair, I'll bring that to an end for now. But at the end of the day, again, I would like to stress to everyone, right? Communication is free. So even if you can't make it to a meeting, a call is free. Government paying for the call, the people paying for the call. So we have no excuse on why things were not said earlier. We have no excuse to why things were not done earlier. And I don't know why we're sitting on here trying to think up excuses on why what wasn't done, because at the end of the day, it was not done, point blank, period. And it can be avoided moving forward. So hopefully, we take lessons learned from all of this, and hopefully, instead of pushing things through, we could take our time next time and work together as a collective, and as what we always portray to the people of being a COM of 1 and a Parliament of 15, and we could get actually the people's work really done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP York. I now go over to MP Lewis. MP Lewis, you have the floor for some brief remarks before I finalize this point. MP Lewis.
Chair Lady, I thank you for that clarification or explanation with regards to what your coalition partner presented. The information mentioned today is being misinterpreted by the majority of the general public. We here in Parliament understand what is going on, but when specific examples are being made, the general public is stating that MP La Cruz, Otley, and myself is one of the reasons this budget has been delayed. Information is being misconstrued. If you're going to project an example of an amendment, then bring them all. Don't mention none at all, or bring them all, because we are the ones here in Parliament today getting the blame for this. Government pushed back an update meeting moreover and moreover when asked to come and present an update here. And I think I have a great relationship with the Minister of Finance, that if our amendment had an issue, it should have been brought to my person and explained to me exactly what the issue is moving forward. It was explained moreover that there are 15 members of Parliament. This has nothing to do with coalition and in opposition. It has to do with the budget of the country that was unanimously passed by every one of us inside of here. So the respect that should have been given, if there's any issue, should have brought to individually or collectively to all of us here to move this country forward, because the people of this country is suffering, Madam Chair. We are now in April, and for us to understand that we tomorrow would need to pass something in order for vacation pay to be paid, in order for police officers to be paid, or overtime to be paid, we cannot rush this thing again. We have to make sure that this is fine-tuned properly, and that clarity is justifiably given to the members of Parliament. And that would be all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Lewis. I now give the floor to MP Myers. MP Myers, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and your support staff, my colleagues here in Parliament, radio listeners, those of you listening by social media, good afternoon. Madam Chair, first of all, I would just like to commend the Minister of Finance. I kind of know how government works. And I know that you know, you may get politicians saying it's not politics, but it's always politics. Because, and I want to commend you specifically because we could ask 100 questions like we did in the budget. One of the things is you tried to present a budget on time. And for that, you was chastised because you tried to adhere to the very principles of good governance. And it didn't work out. And you know, sometimes when you're in Parliament, sometimes when you're an elected official, you have to toughen up your skin and you have to grow up a little bit. Because what happens is you also called my amendment. And I took no offense to it because you said MP Franklin Myers, an amendment to the tune of 1.4 million guilders to help the justice workers. To help the justice workers. But the impression is being given that the justice workers are not being paid. That the civil servants are not being paid. But that's the political part. And then you hear over here and over there. I am here, it is not my role here to defame any member of this Parliament or any minister or any citizen of St. Martin. It is my role to try to enlighten and see how we can advance. We always talk about advancing this country. Well, it starts here. And we have to ask ourselves the question, and one of the questions I will ask you, if you can give me, through you, Madam Chair, tell me when, since we've become a country, how many budgets of St. Martin was presented on time, based on what is regulated, because now we're hearing, oh, in Holland say, we are responsible for what we do. We are responsible for what we do. Holland has their own problems that they have to deal with. And that's why when they bark, we have to stop jumping, because we have our own responsibility. But we are the ones that constantly, because of politics, we are the one who constantly demonize each other. And it's always just to say, you know something? I was there. And if I was there, I would have done it different. And I will do everything in my power not to let you shine. And who suffers for that? St. Martin suffers for that. And why? And it's evident. Because look at what has happened to this country over the past couple of years. Look at what has happened to this country. Can you see the advancement? Can you see anything? If it wasn't for the business sector, and I'm going to say it loud, if it wasn't for the business sector, this country will be in perils. And that is a fact. Because all of the trade shows, the promotions and thing that goes on that draws the tourists to this island, a large amount of it comes from the private sector. And that's a fact. Now, there was a technicality in the budget, and I'm not going to go through what the chair lady went, because she explained it. But for you to take that, the issue, I listened to your elucidation, and for you as a member of parliament to take that, where you said the budget was fine, but based on the amendments by parliament, parliament has the authority to make amendments. But if there's a technicality in that, which there was, and we find ourselves in a quagmire now, you know, the problem is, let's try and solve it. But what we do is, instead of doing that, what we do is we conjure up this whole conspiracy. You know, while we are talking, and I'm going to say it loud, because while we are talking about police not being paid, and every member of parliament has been paid since we swore in. Every single member has been paid. If anything we should do is stop the payment of members of parliament to pay the police. And let's see who really wants that. Since we want to talk about the people, let's stop the politicking for once. Let's govern this country. We're in a great position to do what is right by this country, and let's do what is right by this country. Let's do that. Let's make some real proposals. Let's make some real proposals. Let us propose a 50% salary cut for the members of parliament. Yes, let us do that. You know, let's do that. And then we're going to see let's get down to the people's business. That's all I have to say, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Myers. Members of Parliament, at this time, I think that we have sufficiently asked questions regarding what was presented by the minister. I am going to adjourn briefly and discuss with the minister how we're going to go further on this topic before I go to the other point on the agenda. So this meeting is adjourned for 5 minutes, giving everybody the chance to get a breather while I discuss with the minister how further. Meeting adjourned. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back after a brief adjournment. Just to summarize this Central Committee meeting of Parliament, which was actually called to start the discussion on the draft national ordinance received from the government regarding the vacation allowance. That would have been agenda point number 2, is still to come. However, before that, we had agenda point number 1, which was requested by the Minister of Finance to provide Parliament and the public at large with a status report on the Budget 2025 as approved by Parliament on the 17th of January of this year. However, in the ratification process, and may I remind especially for the general public, that a law passed by Parliament, even unanimously as the Budget 2025 was, unless this is ratified by the government, we have no law. And so, in that process of coming to ratification, in other words, the government approving the ordinance passed by Parliament, and it is in getting to that point of ratification is where the government, as explained by the Minister of Finance earlier, has encountered several issues, especially where the amendments, all of them, amendments can come from members of Parliament. It's a right of the members of Parliament, but amendments to a draft ordinance can also come from the government. What we saw with the handling of the 2025 budget is that we had several amendments from Parliament, we had several amendments from the government itself. And with those amendments, it's where the technical/legal issue, mind you, just textually legal issues, is where the government explained that there were some issues. And I believe, though, given the timeline explained by the Minister of Finance, that government, and hopefully with the assistance of Parliament, must try to find ways to see that this Budget 2025 can be ratified, or in the case of a new budget, it would have to be approved and ratified by the Parliament, respectively, the government of St. Martin. As all know, what do you do in a situation like we're in, which means that the Budget 2025 has not yet been ratified by the government? Then, according to existing laws, the budget of the preceding year, which is 2024 in our case, would act as basis, as grondslag. So you would have to use that as a government in terms of continuing with your governance until you have an approved budget for the year, which would be the year 2025. I just wanted to put that in context, but especially explain that, one, the Parliament of St. Martin approved the draft budget 2025 unanimously. We had 7 amendments in total, and the Parliament approved those 7 amendments as well. So members of Parliament, the Parliament in general, understood of every amendment what the content was, what the material content was. So, for example, in the case of the amendment from the Justice Ministry, it was about increasing the post of salaries, vacation allowance, child allowance, etc., etc. All of those were increases for the different departments of the Ministry of Justice mentioned in the amendment of the Ministry of Justice. That was an amendment that came from the side of government, and so there were 2 more. And from the side of Parliament, we had 4 amendments. I say all of this again to give some explanation why we're here today and why the minister came to or asked to give a presentation on where things are today. But I do believe, letter from the Netherlands or not, that as St. Martin, we should try everything we can legally to try and get a budget 2025, our budget 2025, in place as soon as possible. So having stated that, Minister, you have heard many comments and several questions from members of Parliament. and I ask you anything you wish to address and respond to, and if not, when can members expect answers to the questions, which, if you can't give them here now, when can those answers be expected? And then we go over to the next point on the agenda. So, Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I want to, although it was said already, I want to be very clear, not only to the members of Parliament, but also to the people of St. Martin, to really understand that my intention on coming here today was to basically give an update as to where things are with Budget 2025. That's number one. Number two, it is assumed that I only meant amendments from, for example, MP Lewis, MP La Cruz, MP Otley, and that is not the case because I specifically said all amendments, those from the side of Parliament and also those from the side of government, all had technical legislative issues. And so we find ourselves in a predicament, yes, I agree, not only because of the things that are urgently pending, but you don't want to continue to govern this country on a basis of a previous budget. So I do agree that we need to do everything in our power, both on government side, and that's with the cooperation of Parliament, to see how together we can come with Budget 2025 passed as soon as possible. Like you said, Madam Chair, instruction or not, this is about moving forward in the best interest of the people of St. Martin, and making sure that all things considered, everyone gets what is due to them. I have taken note of all of the questions and suggestions, statements made, and I would like to ask, with your indulgence, that within a week, those responses be given in letter form. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister of Finance, Minister Marinka Gums, and we look forward to receiving those answers, and together we will see about a meeting that can be in response to the answers provided, but there are outstanding meeting requests, and you also get in some other questions from members of Parliament with respect to this issue or related issues. Before I go over to giving you, I believe the Prime Minister is going to lead off on the other point, but in any case, Prime Minister, before I give you the floor, I see that MP Duran wants to make a point. MP Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I heard the Minister of Finance allude to providing responses in letter form. However, we're in a meeting where we're asking questions verbally, so I would like to know through you, and I didn't hear you address the point, would we be receiving it via letter, or would we be receiving answers as they were posed, as is customary based on our rules of order? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Duran. The Minister indicated, or in fact, it would be sort of a question, if the answers to the questions on the first agenda point, if those can be provided in writing, was her suggestion, and that they will be provided within a week's time. So, thank you, members of Parliament. I hope to have answered the question of MP Duran. Had a very specific question, and I responded as to what the Minister indicated regarding the answers. And the Minister, you wanted to add anything to that part? No, not to that? Okay, so the Minister has indicated that she will give answers to the question on the matter of the budget. Those will be provided in writing within a week's time. We go over to agenda point number 2, and as I mentioned in the introduction to this meeting, it is the draft national ordinance amending the regulation, vacation, and exemption of service, actually a vrijstelling, verlof actually, changing the amount of the vacation allowance and also amending the manner in which future changes to the amount of the vacation allowance will be implemented and granting 1 day of leave upon reaching the 45th anniversary of service. This draft national ordinance is number 183 of the parliamentary year 24-25. All members have access to this document via the parliamentary general theme, and I now look to the members of the Council of Ministers. We have the Prime Minister here with us and the Minister of Finance, and I look to, it's the Prime Minister who will take the lead in this, on this point. Prime Minister, Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luc Mercelina, you have the floor for the introduction to this draft law as received from the government of St. Martin.
Honorable President of Parliament, members of Parliament, Secretary General, Minister of Finance, the presence here of the technical staff, those in the Tribune, and especially the people of St. Martin, good afternoon. Today I stand before you not only as Prime Minister, but as a servant of the people, grounded in the firm belief that governance must always place the well-being of its citizens at the center of its priorities. This moment today reflects more than just policy change. It represents the culmination of dialogue, respect, and shared responsibility. The recent adjustments to the ordinance are the result of constructive engagement with our unions and are a testament to what can be achieved when we work together in the spirit of nation building. To the unions in general, I extend my deepest appreciation. Your voices have echoed the concerns of our workforce with strength and with clarity. Your contributions have been instrumental in shaping fair and balanced reforms. And to every worker who continues to serve this country with dedication, this government sees you, values you, and remains committed to advancing your interests. Further, I would like to state that the government will soon continue dialogue with the unions and finalize its negotiations regarding de BRA, de bezoldigingsregeling ambtenaren. This government, under my leadership, remains firmly committed to the working class of St. Martin. We will continue to listen, we will continue to act, and we will continue to ensure that the people of this country, especially those who form the backbone of our public service, are treated with dignity, respect, and fairness they so rightly deserve. At this time, Madam Chair, I would like to officially begin, with your permission, the presentation that I have concerning this topic of these changes on the ordinance on vacation and leave for civil servants. The ordinance on vacation and leave, in Dutch de RVVD, de Regeling, vakantie- en vrijstelling van dienst, is what this is all about this afternoon. In the RVVD, de Regeling, vakantie- en vrijstelling van dienst, the following is actually arranged. It's about day off on specific days, days, vacation allowances, etc. In the slide that you see now on the PowerPoint, the agreement on December 1st, 2023, by letter received from the CCSU, the then government in 2023 reached an agreement with the unions to make changes to the legal position of public servants. These changes regarded, one, the indexation of the salaries in 2024, actually 2%, and in 2025 also 2%, and in 2026 2.5%. This is regulated in de BRA, de bezoldigingsregeling ambtenaren, what we call in English the Remuneration Regulation Civil Servants. This BRA actually goes not through a ordinance, but through a LBHAM. Point two, one-time lump sum payment of 1% has also been agreed upon, but this is also regulated through the BRA, the Remuneration Regulation Civil Servants, as I said. The next point that has been agreed upon was revising Article 3, the run-up skills, and Article 8, the promotions of the BRA through the remuneration policy. Point 4 that has been agreed upon was increasing vacation pay to 7% in 2024 and 8% in 2025. This all through this ordinance, the RVVD, de Regeling vakantie en vrijstelling van dienst, the ordinance vacation and leave. The present government wholeheartedly supports these changes, and further testimony to this was my letter on June the 11th, 2024, that I dispatched to the unions, reaffirming my commitment with my government to this covenant. By entering into this agreement, the government is obligated to make these changes in the relevant legislations constituting the legal position of public servants. I have already signed the BRA, and it will be handled in the next week. The BRA is an LBM. On slide 3, most of the listed changes pertains to the BRA and not to the Landsverordening, the national ordinance. You have to realize that very good. However, the increase of the vacation pay and partly the additional jubilees require changes not to the BRA, but to the ordinance on vacation and leave, once more the Regeling, vakantie en vrijstelling van dienst. The changes to the ordinance on vacation and leave is reason we are in Parliament today. These specific changes are the following. Increase of vacation pay to 7% in 2024, as I said already, regulated in Article 22. Increase of vacation pay to 8% in 2025, also regulated in Article 22. And a day off with the Jubilee for 45 years of service, regulated in Article 26. These changes are fully illustrated in this slide. Going on to the next slide, slide 4, Article 22 that I was talking about, the following. This slide shows the difference between the old text of Article 22 and the new one. On the left side, you have the old text. On the right side, you have the new text. It increases the vacation pay to 7% in 2024 and 8% in 2025. To come into effect, the calculation is determined the year before. That is how it works in general. The addition of paragraph 2 to Article 22 pertains to making it easier to make changes to the vacation pay in the future. After agreement with the CCU, it then would require only an LBHAM and not an ordinance to continue with changes. Going now to slide number 5. Article 26 is now the one that we're going to discuss. This slide shows the change made to Article 26. It adds a day off with the jubilee of 45 years, as I said already. For the sake of more clarity, slide 6 is not about the Landsverordening, the national ordinance. It's about the BRA. It's about the remuneration in this case. The Jubilee payments are not regulated in this ordinance. However, I am presenting this slide for clarity purposes. For clarity's sake, this is not about days of regulated in this ordinance, but about remuneration regulated in the BRA. So today we are not discussing the BRA, we are discussing the Landsverordening. The Landsverordening goes about the days, and the remuneration is going through the BRA, and the BRA goes through the LBHAM. Adding additional jubilees. Jubilees used to be, in this slide you can see it, 25 years in service, 35 years in service, and 40 years. But now 15, 20, 30, and 45 have been added. Jubilees for 15 and 20 years are getting half a month salary extra, but no day off. And if you read good that slide, it states also that it was never so that you will get a day off or a half day off with a 15-year jubilee. 30 years will receive 1 month salary and 1 day off, and 45 years will receive 2 months salary and a day off. The Jubilee payments are not once more regulated in the ordinance. As I said, the remuneration is not honored in the national ordinance, but in the BRA, the bezoldigingsregeling ambtenaren, and that goes, of course, through a LBHAM. Then we go to the last slide, and that is that we can conclude that we have brought the changes that actually has been set on and agreed with the unions in the former government. We agreed and we thought that we must proceed with this agreement that has been expressed in a covenant. And that is the result today, that we are presenting the finalized draft national bird ordinance to actually get to the phase of approval of Parliament. I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your introduction to the draft law before us, and as explained, it has to do with the vacation allowance and the increase in vacation allowance, as well as the 1 day for the celebrants of 45 years of service. The Minister of Finance, you have anything to add on this agenda point, or the Prime Minister's introduction is sufficient? And then, again, thank you, Prime Minister, and members of Parliament. You now have the opportunity to ask questions regarding the draft law before us, and I give the floor to MP York. MP, no, our screens are not in sync. We have okay, let me take it from the members who have indicated their to speak on the topic. MP Otley, was it on this topic that you wanted to speak? Okay, because I have here, we start with MP York and then MP Irian. Okay, yes, now we're in sync, so I give the floor to MP York. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, through you, I just have some simple questions for the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I know it's something you picked up and basically your department or ministry has picked up and continuing on, and you brought, or the ministry brought their own little alterations to take it to the next level. I appreciate that. My one question that immediately came to mind, and it might be very simple, right? someone has to work 45 years. This is not critique, it's just a simple question. Someone has to work 45 years just to get 1 day off, legally? Is there a specific reason why it's just 1 day? And I understand, I don't know if the prior version had it period in it, but I think if somebody worked 45 years for one particular entity, that they're due to more than just 1 day. So I would like to know if, what are the options, or were options explored into different extending that one particular item. Secondly, the 2 month salary for 45 years. I understood that in the previous version it was 1 month. It was brought to 2. I would just like to know what were the arguments or the things explored to come to any particular number, right? So 1 month, 2 months. Why is it not? I'm just saying something for explanation's sake, but why is it not 4 months? Is there a particular reason why it's 2 particular months and before 1? So on that, also a question on last year. I know of some individuals around the month July and August that had their 25th jubilee, and they have yet to receive any type of funds or anything pertaining to that. So I don't know if this had anything to do with this, had to get cleared first before being able to disperse any jubilees, but seeing it's almost a year ago, I would like to know what is the status on jubilees from 2024. And I would like to end with saying the following, more encompassing everything, and I must commend the Prime Minister on that. When the Prime Minister speaks on any topic or is faced with any question, I never get the feeling that he's, through you, Madam Chair, going around from answering it. I don't have to agree with his answer, but I never get the feeling that he's trying to skirt around answering or not giving the chance to answer. And I find that very commendable, and I have to give you commend the Prime Minister on that. But in saying that, I do get the feeling sometimes, and being 100% honest, that when it pertains to the Finance Minister, when things get a bit hot, I have the feeling that others speak on behalf of the minister, right, without speaking on behalf of the minister. So, for example, on All Topics Finance of today, I've heard another mic speaking more on the topic than the minister herself. Coming into this meeting, I've heard someone else speaking more on this topic than the minister herself. So I would just, and I'm sure they have reasons for that, but I would just like to give the minister, I have this issue with one other minister as well. I would like just to give the minister one tip, one advice. You're the Minister of Finance. Anything finance related, being relayed from government should come from you, Minister. That way, there's no third-hand, fourth-hand information being spread, and no one can say it was said, but the minister didn't say it herself. So I would just like that one piece of information, one word of advice. If anything is said officially from government, whether it's in this hall or at a press briefing or wherever, have it come from your person. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York. I go over and I give the floor to MP Irian. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, in the previous agenda point, it was mentioned about politics, et cetera, and I tend to agree. I think once you are elected, you are a politician, so that's what we do, it is politics. So I think that's very obvious. Madam Chair, typically with this government, if there's any sort of anything maybe negative or there's anything that the previous government did that they did not like, they tend to say the previous administration did that. So in this case, I'll help the Prime Minister out and mention that everything that we just saw today was actually done by the previous administration. I know, I want to make it clear. Clarifying. And then, Madam Chair, and going back to the previous agenda point, I'll make it clear also that in answering the questions from the Minister of Finance, I would also like from our faction that our previous questions that were sent on February 21st regarding the budget also be sent with the answers from just now, since we weren't allowed to speak earlier. Regarding Regarding the presentation, I'm happy that we've gotten this far. And MP York asked a question regarding the 45 years, and I could sort of answer that. That came up, the 45 years was presented by government. The union, I believe, wanted up to 40 years. We put it to 45. We also said, if you reach the age of 45 working for any entity, that's more than double your life almost, working for that entity, you deserve more. So we decided to double the pay. But I remember, and I don't know if that's removed, we also increased the amount of days. So I don't know if that was removed, if that was taken out, because I remember us also advising to make sure that we have more days, and that's not given in this presentation. So was that removed and why? And the other important question that MP York mentioned regarding pay of jubilees. A lot of civil servants are requesting their payment of jubilees. Even the one started at the 15 years that made it in 2023, and they were told it can't be paid because of this legislation. But then, how does the government that already set precedent, you paid vacation pay last year? So the excuse of not, and matter of fact, in the budget debate, this question was posed, and the Prime Minister did answer and say that they will be paid. So for the civil servants that are asking, and there are a lot asking and watching right now, will the jubilees be paid in the same year that the vacation pay was paid? Because why pay the vacation pay without the legal basis, but say I'm going to leave out the jubilees? And that'll be all now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Irian. Before I continue, members of Parliament, I heard just now some brief corrections to MP Irian's statement when he was stating that he did not hear the government refer to the previous government. I want you to take note of MP York's comment regarding the mic, and that he was hearing comments from all different mics, so I guess he couldn't be talking to the chair's mic, so I guess he's talking to his colleagues. So please take note of when you speak and try to speak for the minister. So we continue, and next up is MP Otley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the Honorable Prime Minister, through you, Madam Chair, I would like to say this is what exemplification of what government is about, continuation, and understanding that when you have something that benefits the people of St. Martin, benefits the civil servant, the largest workforce that we have, it's always, we always welcome, as someone in the previous administration, anything to enhance what was there. Enhancement is always welcome, and as a member of Parliament. Honorable Prime Minister, I just have one question. The unions, their feedback and their take on just the minor changes or any recommendations that the unions have provided that is not taken up, and why were they not able to be taken up? Other than that, I'm just happy to hear that the Ibra Act was signed. This is something that has kept a lot of civil servants stagnant for years. It has been a major, major problem because and government used to be something that everyone wanted to go there. And then because of these situations over the past few years, we have seen everyone wanting to leave the organization. So any enhancement is always welcome on my end and on the United People's Party end. So I'm happy to hear that it's moving. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Otley. I now give the floor to MP De Wever. MP De Wever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to everyone again. My question was just on one of the slides. It was mentioned, I believe it was 15 years and 20 years, where it was just the amount that was going to be or paid out as part of the suggestion of the changes in the legislation was 50% of a month's pay and not a day added. But I just wanted to understand the reasoning for why not adding a day, because if I'm looking at it in financial terms, adding a day seems less than the other option of a payout. Not that it's one or the other, but I just want to understand the logic behind no extra vacation day added. Thank you very much. I hope that's clear. It was based on the slide.
Thank you, MP De Wever. Is there any other member of parliament who wishes to address this draft ordinance? Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, that does not appear to be necessary. You've heard some questions on the draft, and the Prime Minister, you care to go into those now, to go into the questions?
President of Parliament, if it's possible to adjourn for 5 minutes for me just to double check and answer,
Sure.
and then I can give probably answers to the questions.
Sure. This meeting is adjourned until 4:55. So 5 minutes to 5. Meeting adjourned until 4:55. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, a good afternoon and welcome back to this meeting, this Central Committee meeting of Parliament. We are at the point of having received some questions on the draft national ordinance, increase in vacation allowance, and some other matters regarding civil servants. And the Prime Minister is now ready to respond to the few questions that were posed on the topic. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Coming back to the questions of the members of Parliament concerning this topic, the first one is, of course, from MP York. 45 years to just get 1 day off. Can you give me an explanation on that? The answer on that is that in executing the continuation of the agreement, the government had a team negotiating with the union team, and together, of course, the CCSU represented. Agreement has been signed, and the agreement is what has been the content of the agreement has been given continuity to. So that is the answer that I can give you. 2 months salaries, what were the arguments to come to 2 months? That's the same. The whole negotiation took place. Proposal, counter-proposals has been put on table, and at the end an agreement was settled in the former government that this is the covenant, how we're going to move forward, and that is the reason that for 45 years Jubilee, 2 months salary has been agreed upon in the ordinance. Last year civil servants made 25 years but are yet to receive. What is the status? The agreement that has been made also in the negotiation in that time was that the Prime Minister agreed on moving forward with the payout of jubilees. It is not so that there was an agreement that the Prime Minister agreed upon to go back retroactively and start paying jubilees that were not honored in the past. The agreement that was at that particular moment is that we are going to approve actually the compensation of jubilees, but we're going to do it moving forward, and there has never been an agreement of retroactive payment of jubilees in the past. That is what has been agreed upon. Pardon? Yes, and we added the new jubilees 15 and 20 years. I will come back on the 15 and 20 years. We have to realize that for the 20 and the 15 and 20 years, there were never a day off. The 15 is getting a half-month salary through a BRA. The 20 years is going to get a whole month salary through the BRA. But the 15 and 20 years never used to have a day off or half day off in the past, and in the new covenant also no agreement and changes has been proposed in the covenant that we had to follow, that some changes took place, except that for 15 years they will get a half month salary, and the 20 years would get a whole year salary. A whole month, the 20. Okay? Yes? It's a half month for 20 years. Okay. MP Irion, has days been removed from originally what has been agreed upon? No. No days has been removed from the original agreed upon amount of days. The jubilees will be paid out as of the moment of approval through the BRA. As said in that agreement in the covenant, there was no agreement and no documents going back that in case of the payout of the jubilee, that it will go back retroactively. MP Otley, his question was if in the negotiations, if we got any feedback of the union by going through the process to agree on what has been established today? The answer is no, because there was an extensive negotiation by the former government that came and led to a covenant, and we just took the agreement, being the covenant, and moved forward with it to formalize it. MP De Wever, if there were any adding of days to it or not. The answer is no. We just, as I said to MP Otley through the President of Parliament, we just follow the covenant as has been agreed upon. Madam Chair, I would like also, as the leader of this government, to compliment a development that I see today on the floor of Parliament by the example of MP York and the example of MP Myers, and also the example of yourself as President, that we see that we are now at the verge that we have to work together. And there is also, MP Otley gave a compliment that we took up an initiative of the former government and just move on with it for us to get to this agreement that will be favorable for all civil servants of this country. And I think this is an exemplary way of dealing on the floor of Parliament by realizing at the end of the day that governing a country is about continuity. And I think successful governing of a country is about working together and accentuating the positive, constructive approach for us to make this St. Martin a great place again. Thank you, President of Parliament.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I'm understanding that you might have misunderstood a question from MP York. MP York, is that correct? Yes, so MP York is going to, could you explain so that the Prime Minister can go into it? MP York, your comments on the Prime Minister's answer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the Prime Minister slightly misunderstood my question. The question, because what has happened is what is happening. The milestones for the Jubilees are being being adjusted, and some new milestones are being added, right? My question was more in reference to the prior existing Jubilees, as it being the 25th year. So that already exists. There are some people that I know personally, and I'm sure I don't know all, so maybe there are some more people from 2024 that hasn't received their 25th year Jubilee. In particular, I know of one or two persons that made the Jubilee in 2024, July and August. And my question was, is that being handled? Is the government aware that they were not paid out? What is the status on those existing Jubilees?
Thank you. Thank you, MP York. MP Irian, I see you two wanted the floor. Is it you have a question, or you want to hear from the Prime Minister on this first?
Yes.
No, you have a question. Okay. I'll give MP Irian the floor now. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the answers, Prime Minister. And but you didn't answer the question regarding the civil servants are asking. The vacation pay, the 7% increase was paid out last year. The legislation is not in as yet. So they're asking, why can't the Jubilees also be paid out the same way, since the legislation is going to be more than likely to be approved by Parliament? So whatever basis that we paid out the vacation pay, since it's the same legislation, why can't Jubilees be paid out? It's the same legislation. So why the other, because in the Dutch law, you can't have the discrimination, right? So why can the Jubilees, or why haven't they been paid out similar to the vacation pay? Is the same law? And another question from the teachers, the public school teachers, which I think is very unfair, which I learned a few months ago, that they have to request their Jubilee, which I think is a little weird. That they say in the government, the Human Resource Department, they start a process and they realize and say, hey, this person is getting 25 years to make the file. But teachers now have to keep, they have to know when their Jubilee is coming up and now go and request that they get a Jubilee, which I think should just be automated, similar to that in government. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Irian. I continue and I give the floor to MP Waver. MP Waver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to Griffier, my fellow MPs, to the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister of Finance, support staff, those listening and viewing here in the Tribune, and also those on the various social media. I just have a question for the Honorable Prime Minister, if he can please share with the members of Parliament any correspondence from the previous PM in relating to any agreements that was made for this. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Weaver. Prime Minister, I don't see any other member of Parliament having questions with respect to the answers that you gave. You can immediately go into them, Prime Minister.
Yes, President of Parliament, that is possible. Concerning the question from MP York concerning the possibility of the payment of the Jubilee from 2024, right? That is possible. That is possible. There is a slight strange tradition that most of the time, and we can discuss if that is ethically correct, that the civil servant, him or herself, takes the initiative to actually inform P&O that, listen, I'm getting to the 25 years or 30 years. So that is traditionally how it went until now. It's not automatically that it pops up in our system. And secondly, if that is the case, that Jubilee momentum of compensation has been missed, as Prime Minister, I apologize for that, because that is a momentum actually that you have to show your respect and gratefulness to so many years of service to the public of St. Martin. And I regret if that took place in the past. And hopefully, if that is the case, please, the civil servants that have experienced this, please contact us for us to move forward with the compensation, because that is not our intention that that has to go that way. Concerning MP Irion, concerning the vacation pay and the jubilee pay. The jubilee pay goes through the BRA, de bezoldigingsregelen ambtenaren, and that goes through a LBHAM. And there is no retroactive agreement. There is no agreement on retroactive payment of the jubilee pay. So this goes through the BRA. The moment the BRA is approved for the new years, the new amount of jubilees, it will be paid out. For example, for 2024 will be paid in 2025, and then from as of June, so it's going to be paid. So, but there is no retroactive payment because this goes through a LBHAM, and there is no agreement other than just the payment, but not going retroactive with the jubilees. Concerning if MP Weaver about the correspondence, I will not have all the details of negotiations that took place between the Prime Minister and the negotiation team of the government with the unions. What I do have is, of course, the covenant that has been the proof of the agreement between government and CCSU representing the unions. And that is actually the base, fundamental document that we use to move forward in continuity of giving follow-up and agreements that was made by prior governments. So I can for sure give you a copy of that covenant and the letter. You're welcome.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for the answers. You know, I will allow MP Irion, who doesn't want to belabor the point, but because I think your question is slightly different than what the Prime Minister has answered, right? You want to state that again, MP Irion?
Thank you, Chair. So I could tell the Chair, I don't want to belabor the point, but clarity needs to be given to the civil servants. In June, vacation pay was paid out. We're dealing with the vacation pay now, right? In June, persons also made the jubilee also. So based on the same legislation, why can't at least then the jubilees be paid out from the time you paid out vacation pay? Because the legal basis is there. You paid out vacation pay, this legislation. A jubilee was made in June, July, August, September, December, up to now. See, even the ones this year, why can't that be paid out the same way we paid out the vacation pay? Because the vacation pay is the same law. And the law isn't approved in Parliament as yet either. So we paid out vacation pay, so why not pay out the jubilees the same way? Using the same mechanisms.
You understand, Prime Minister, where the, so someone celebrating a jubilee in somewhere in 2025, did you say that according to the BRA, that person will be paid out in 2026, everybody for 2025 and everybody for 2024 in 2025, if that could? Just 1 second there, members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, as the Prime Minister is just synchronizing that information or... I do think it's important indeed, so we'll allow the Prime Minister to get that clear because I hear the question by the MP. Okay, let me just adjourn for 3 minutes. The Prime Minister can have his brief discussion. Meeting adjourned for 3 minutes. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, going into good evening, kind of. Welcome back to this meeting on the draft law regulating vacation allowance and other matters pertaining to civil servants, amongst which celebration of anniversaries, milestones, 2015, 20, 25, 35, and 45 years. The Prime Minister is now going to respond to some questions regarding the in going into force, going into effect dates. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, President of Parliament. Coming back to the statement and question from MP Irion, the following. The vacation pay that is determined by this Landsverordening states that we are going to go retroactive back for the vacation pay as of June 2023. And the jubileum that you're talking about, why not the same? Because the jubileum is determined to go back through the covenant retroactive as of January 2024. That's the difference. That is how it has been agreed upon. That's my answer, President. Pardon?
I allow
Yes.
you, MP Irion, to verbalize your question.
Based on what you're saying, then the 2024 will be paid.
Yes.
Okay, so that would mean, just since you have the Minister of Finance here, that it would have to come in the new budget that is coming also.
Minister of Finance, you want to chime in on that question?
So allow me to chime in. It was in the budget 2024.
MP Irion wishes to clarify.
Madam Chair, so to be clear, the Prime Minister says the jubilees of 2024, so the new ones, he made it clear that they will be paid. The Minister of Finance says it was budgeted for 2024. So if it was, it should have been paid in 2024. We shouldn't have a discussion anymore about it being paid. My question would be irrelevant. So I'm saying, my question to the Prime Minister was, the jubilees that were missed in 2024 that he says will be paid, they have to be now be put in budget 2025 to be paid. Can I get clarity on that?
Minister of Finance, you will respond.
We were waiting on the law. Now that the law is here, we can now go out and pay those since it was already budgeted for in 2024.
However, I just want to add the payments that are going to be taking place in 25, even for 24, would have to be in the budget 2025. It is already? Am I hearing that? I just want to for us to get it clear. No, so what about the payments that will still have to take place in 25? Those will have to be put in the budget. They are in the budget 25. They are in the budget 25. Okay, then. Wait. MP Roseberg, you wanted to chime in on the discussion, please do.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Bear with me, please, seeing that I'm not feeling that well. For clarity's sake, is it possible that this matter can be looked into so that we get it clear legally where we're standing, so that there's no misunderstanding on the matter? Because, of course, there's the public tuned in. We have people in the public also present, so that we have it clear law-wise and also year-wise and financially-wise, because at this moment, it's a little confusing. That's my contribution for today. Thank you.
I would want to ask the government, yes, to provide us an overview of that in terms of 24 and 25, because any payments in 2025, even though the person might have celebrated their jubilee in 24, we will also need it in the budget. If they were not paid, we would need it in the budget 2025. So, but indeed, if you know, in the responses, because remember, based on the discussion here in Central Committee, we would have to receive the reports on the law, and if in there everything can be clear in terms of the answers to be provided. Members of Parliament, are there any other questions or comments on this draft law? I don't get the impression that they are. The report will be made of this meeting on the draft national ordinance, and that report will be sent to the government for the handling. At this, Prime Minister, is there anything else you wanted to add? Not at this time. Okay, so then I want to thank the Minister of General Affairs and the Prime Minister, Dr. Luc Mercelina. I want to thank the Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gomes, and their support staff here this afternoon, as well as those behind the scene following this meeting. I want to thank our support staff here and, of course, the members of Parliament. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting, and I thank you for your participation and hereby close this meeting, wishing everyone a good evening. Meeting closed.